The next thing I'm going to talk about is the use of music in song. So we use song for 3 different purposes, or I put it into 3 different categories. Songs for routine. So for example, we sing a song about addition every day at the beginning of math. So that kind of set the routine. When the kids heard the addition song, they knew it was time to start our math activities. Another use for song was song as literature. So the song as literature would be songs that are more complex conceptually, linguistically, melodically, and then the songs that are usually sung with younger children that are repetitive and short and have a quite controlled vocabulary. And then the last category that I'm going to talk about are songs used to highlight lesson content. And these songs were songs that were descriptive and had lots of movement in them. So these pictures are examples of 2 songs that we sang when we were practicing body parts. And this is Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes over here, and this is Tootie Top, which is a silly song where you point to lots of different body parts. And this girl thought it was hilarious. So, what I want to talk about is the fact that when we're using song, the kids have a lot, especially this type of song, where they're acting things out with their body and singing and listening and watching to their classmates. The kids have the opportunity to kind of pick and choose which parts of that activity they're going to participate in. So over here I have 4 boys who were standing at the front and they weren't really doing anything. This is head, shoulders, knees, and toes. And they weren't singing, they weren't showing the appropriate body motions. They were just kind of standing there looking like they didn't want to participate. However, later when I interviewed them, when I conducted the interviews, I interviewed 3 out of the 4 of those boys, and 2 of them had said that they remembered, and 2 of them voluntarily recalled remembering and said that they enjoyed the Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes song, and 2 of them said that they recalled having enjoyed the Tootie Top song. So what this demonstrates for me is that in this case, regardless of whether or not they looked like they were engaged in what was going on, they really were engaged, certainly to an extent, because they recalled these experiences and they recalled enjoying them. They might not have wanted to sing and they might not have wanted to move their bodies, but they were participating in it, and that they were listening and they were watching and they knew what was going on, enough to remember it later, certainly. And like I was saying before, when we were doing activities, nothing was done in isolation. So in this situation, we also traced here, I am tracing a girl, and we labeled all of her body parts after we sang the song. So in the first couple of days when we sang Head and Shoulders, we labeled those body parts. And then after that, when we sang Tootie Top, we labeled those body parts. So that also gives students another mode to look at, to attune to. They can sing the song, they can look at the tracing of their friend, and the fact that it was a tracing of their friend, and we referred to it by her name, really kind of gave them a connection with it as well. And so like those boys who were not actively participating in the way that you usually think of as active participation, but they were participating internally in some way so that they remembered it and voluntarily recalled having enjoyed it. So my conclusions for the use of song are that behaviorally, students demonstrated an appreciation for music in the classroom. So what I mean by that is that students showed that they liked singing songs, and that they learned from singing songs. They would ask to sing songs at different times when we weren't doing those activities, and when we did do them, most of the students really followed along, either by listening or by watching or by following along with the hand motions, regardless of whether or not they were doing the entire thing along with us. And also, the use of songs, like I said, allows for students to be active participants to the degree of their own comfort. So if a student doesn't feel comfortable singing out loud, but does feel comfortable doing like the hand motions, pointing to their head, shoulders, knees, and toes, then they can participate in that way, and they can engage themselves in the situation in whichever ways that they feel most confident and most able to do so. And also, while I didn't talk a lot about music as literature here in this presentation, I think it's really important because it helps students to engage in literate thought, like I was talking about before. The students, it's a different mode of input for students to think about this literate thought. So in regards to visual cues, I have two categories there. The two-dimensional visual cues, which are essentially what I started this whole research process thinking about, the pictures and drawings and photos that I wanted to use to accompany all my spoken word, and the realia, real objects that the students used and touched and manipulated. And so these two-dimensional visual cues, like I said, they kind of got pushed away because I realized they weren't really as effective as I'd initially hoped. They helped some of the kids understand, but they really didn't draw the students into the lesson in the same way as these real objects or realia did. So I just started thinking about this concept of realia as a separate mode altogether, different from the use of other visual cues. So I didn't really incorporate it deliberately into my lessons to look at as a separate mode, but it was incorporated throughout. And so here are just some examples of different real objects that we used. Here we were learning about pumpkins, and we were talking about the seeds and the pulp and the skin. And the students were able to touch the pumpkins and the seeds and the pulp and the skin. So instead of just drawing pictures of them and labeling them, they're able to connect those labels and those words with the actual parts of the pumpkin. And over here is a boy. He's shaking a jar of heavy whipping cream, which is turning into butter. And so this was in conjunction with a lesson we were doing on milk and dairy comes from cows. And so this student, regardless of whether or not he understood the vocabulary that was going around him in this lesson, he was able to see me take a bottle of milk or heavy whipping cream and pour it into a jar. And then he was able to shake it and see it turn into something thicker, and then later taste it. So he was able to experience the process of it without, while he may or may not have understood the specific vocabulary used in the lesson. And then down on the bottom, I have pictures of students playing with and manipulating and looking at mealworms, which are the larval stage of the darkling beetle. And mealworms were a big component of our science unit on insects. And so the fact that the students were able to manipulate these mealworms and touch them really helped them see what an insect looks like up close, personal. So like I was saying before, I didn't really get a chance to think a lot about the theory behind or the concepts encompassed within this use of these real objects, because I didn't start thinking of it as a separate category until a lot later. But that's one of the things that I would really like to look at in the future, is to investigate more how I can use these real objects into other, into lessons, how I can use them more deliberately than I had used them when I was teaching, and how to use them in conjunction with the other modes I talked about, the help me teach mode and the songs and music mode, are other modes that I come up with as well. So to talk about some of the limitations and extensions of the things that I discussed here, in regards to help me teach, it's very important for the teacher to have clear expectations for the student's behavior. And the students must learn to respect their peers. So this is kind of a joint goal between the teacher and the student. The teacher needs to have these expectations clearly set out, and the students need to learn how to respect their peers as they would a teacher when their peers are helping the teacher teach or helping lead an activity. And in regards to music and song, I would like to put more of a focus and study more the use of music as literature, because as I used it, the music as literature, it was kind of more an auxiliary use of literature. It was never the central focus. It was kind of things off to the side used to help us learn something instead of the main item. And I would really like to use that more and incorporate music as literature more into my teaching. And like I was talking about for my visual cues, I would really like to do some further investigation into the use of these real objects alone and or in conjunction with other instructional modes to see how effective it can be.